everyone, welcome to Odisha State Open University. So today we will learn on PSO course code, that is PSO 102, Sociology of Tribes. So Unit 1, that is Meanings and Features of Tribes. It provides an in-depth understanding of tribes, also their historical evolution, cultural identity and contemporary challenges. So it explores the meanings of tribes from different perspectives, their classification, their interaction with the mainstream society. Now, we're looking at the definition of tribe, that is, when we look at the way we define the tribe, the term tribe, it comes from the Latin word that is tribus. So, this was originally referred to political division in ancient Rome. Now, over the change of time, its meaning expanded to describe indigenous and traditional communities with unique cultural practices. Now, looking at the basic understandings of tribes, different scholars have defined tribes in various ways. Now, when we look from the perspective of anthropologists, we see them as groups which includes common customs, language, and kinship-based organizations. Now, looking from the perspective of sociologists such as E.B. Taylor, he believed that tribes represented early forms of society where people lived communally without a structured government. Now, the Indian social thinker, that is D.N. Majumdar, he defined tribes as a group sharing a common language, territory, and even common name, and they also have their own cultural heritage. Now, moving back on to the historical evolution of tribes, we can say that tribes have evolved through different historical periods. Now, the first we will look into is the prehistoric period. Now, during prehistoric period, tribes, they lived as a hunter and gatherers, moving from one place to another, and they mostly relied on nature for their food and even for survival. And looking at the social organization, it was mostly based on the kinship system, and the tasks were divided according to their age and also gender. So when we look at their religious belief, it was mostly animistic, that is, they mostly worshipped nature and spirits. Now, another, we will look tribes from the ancient period. Now, tribes started, practicing agriculture, which led to the settled communities. Now, chiefs or leaders, they emerged to manage tribal affairs during the ancient period, and in this period, trade and exchange of goods with other communities also began to flourish. Now, looking at the characteristics of tribes from the medieval period, we see that many tribes were absorbed into larger kingdoms and also states. Now, during the medieval period, some tribes, they lost their independence, while others continued to maintain their traditional ways. Now, during this period, religious influences also grew, but tribes preserved many of their indigenous customs. Now, tribal society were also greatly impacted as a result of colonialism. Now, colonial rule, they had a significant impact on the tribal communities, especially concerning India. First is they faced large amount of displacement and even marginalization. That is, which was mostly observed as a result of British land policies, where tribes were taken away from their ancestral lands. Apart from this, the introduction of taxes and even the land revenue system also weakened the economic system and also economic independence of the tribes. Another impact of colonial impact on tribes we can see is tribal resistance and revolts. So many tribes, they revolted against the British rule. That is, they fought to protect their land and also their identity. Now, when we look at the famous tribal uprisings, we can cite the example of Santal rebellion, which took place between 1855 to 1856, and the Munda rebellion that took place between 1899 to 1900. So apart from that, another impact of colonialism on tribes can be observed in terms of cultural separation. So cultural separation was observed as British, they tried to change the tribal customs, their language and also their religious practices. However, despite this, many tribes, they even emerged to preserve their unique cultural heritage. Now, we will look at the understanding of tribes in the post-independence developments. That is, what took place after India got independence. What was the status of tribal? So, after independence, India adopted some tribal policies to integrate the tribal communities into the mainstream society. Now, the first we will look into the integration policies. That is, during this period, the government introduced reservation policies, which was widely observed in the education sector, and also jobs to uplift the tribal communities. Second, we can see tribal welfare boards were established and special schemes were launched for the development. It was also observed in terms of land rights and forest policies. That is, the Forest Act 2006 granted the tribes their legal rights over the traditional lands. However, despite this, conflict over land ownership, it still exists. Now, when we look into the modern challenges among the tribal community, they continue to face issues mostly in terms of poverty, illiteracy, and also lack of healthcare system. So, political underrepresentation and also environmental changes, it continue to threaten their basic way of life. Now we will look into the key features of tribal communities. So tribes, they have a certain distinct characteristics that set them apart from the mainstream society. The first is, key feature of the tribal society is in terms of common territory. So they are deeply connected to the lands, which shapes their way of life, their identity. And second is kinship based social structure. So tribal society, they are family oriented with close ties among their members. Kinship influences their marriage system, their leadership, and also the inheritance of property. Third is the cultural distinctiveness. So tribes, they have unique cultures, unique festivals, traditions, arts, and also unique dialects. So their way of dressing, their way of storytelling and rituals also reflect their rich heritage. Now we will delve into the key features of tribal societies. So tribes, they have distinct characteristics that set them apart from the mainstream territory. Now, when we come to self-sufficiency and harmony with nature, tribal communities have traditionally been self-reliant and also eco-friendly. So, they have like economic self-sufficiency. They depend on subsistence farming, hunting, gathering, and also handicrafts for their survival. So they are also observed found in the informal political structure. That is, decision making is based on the consensus within the tribal society, which with leaders or elders guiding the community. Now they also maintain harmonious relationship with the nature. That is, they follow very sustainable practices and also respect the natural resources. So their lifestyle also promotes environmental conservation and minimal waste. Now, overall picture, when we look at the wider picture of the tribal communities, they have really played a vital role in the entire human history. can be observed in various ways, such as from preserving unique cultural identities and also their traditional knowledge system. So, but in spite of having their own unique cultural aspects, the tribal communities still face challenges in the contemporary society. They face challenges of marginalization, displacement, and even their cultural loss. That is, their culture is at stake. So, however, there are various governmental policies that aim to support the culture practices, the language, their identity of tribes, but there are certain issues such as poverty, a lack of education, and even the environmental changes, the global warming, continue to remain a greatest concern. So, moving forward, it is essential to recognize and protect tribal heritage, while it is also necessary to ensure that their rights, their dignity, and also sustainable development in the modern world is observed and provided in order to keep our tribal community safe and intact. So this is all about unit 1, that is meaning and nature of tribe, which is a part of MS Sociology PSO 102. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.